Save me now.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Your boy is tired, but I had to do it. I just got out of working an overnight, and I had to jump on Mortal Kombat as soon as I got out. I am a huge Mortal Kombat fan. I've been a fan of Mortal Kombat since I was like 7, and I really wanted to see what was good with this movie. For anyone who hasn't seen one of my movie reviews, the format usually goes like this. Usually I start off with a spoiler-free review, talking about as few spoilers as possible, then jump heavy into spoilers, what happened to the movie, and then, you know, give my final verdicts at the end. There will be timestamps in the description, so you guys can jump ahead as you need to. But if you guys want to hear my thoughts, my initial thoughts on the movie, just stay tuned. Now, right off the bat, it's Mortal Kombat. This movie plays heavy off of nostalgia. They do change a few things, and we'll get into that in the spoiler section, but it is a big time nostalgia. So many characters that they squeezed into this movie, and like, they didn't really overblow it too much. They didn't dive into too many people's storylines, but they were there to be there. The best things I want to say about the movie, the fight choreography was pretty great. Some characters, again, I'll talk about who in spoilers. Some characters were so spot on, I swear I was watching the video game. It was kind of crazy. The music set the atmosphere for the entire movie so well. Like every time events were happening, the background music was changing and picking up and slowing down and getting, you know, like heroic and getting dark. Like the music for this movie was fantastic. Whoever scored this movie did a great job. The CGI, there were some scenes where the CGI was top notch, and some scenes where the CGI was kind of meh. So it was just on the CGI alone, I'll rate that real quick. I'd say it was maybe about a 7. There were some parts where it really did just take me out, and some parts where I was just like, this is badass. For anybody who watched the trailer, we do know that there obviously is a new character in the movie. That's Cole. He is kind of the main protagonist of the movie. His whole storyline is kind of out there, but I like the way they did it, and I'll get to that again in spoilers. But as far as him as a character, he is actually not replacing any characters. Again, we'll cover that in spoilers. But he is an okay character. He had a couple cheesy lines and like cheesy interactions, but I mean, it's a video game movie. It kind of felt like a video game movie in some points. I'll talk about the stuff in the trailer because that helped me to avoid spoilers. Kano was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Whoever that dude that played him was, he absolutely killed it. The girl who played Sonya was a little over the top for me, but not bad. Jax, we gotta talk about him. Sub-Zero and Scorpion, they were kind of the highlights of the movie, and they were more of a big deal than I thought they were gonna be. But again, we'll cover that in spoilers. Cinematography, the movie was shot very well. Camera angles were pretty dope. The way they circled around certain scenes looked gorgeous. The settings, the actual sets for a lot of the stuff, like Sub-Zero, some of Sub-Zero's big fight scenes, like, small spoiler, sorry, I gotta talk about it. We saw it in the trailer, but the beginning of the part of the movie where it shows Cole fighting in a cage, because he was an MMA fighter. Later on, this is actually that same area but covered in ice because of Sub-Zero, and it came out really, really cool. So the way they changed up the settings, I'm sorry, there's just so much I want to talk about in spoilers, and I'm trying really hard to keep it to a minimum because I promise you guys. But another thing I want to talk about is They did it. They threw it in at the end. They did a remix of the original Mortal Kombat theme. It started off really good. It sounded like a more dubsteppy version of the original song, which was cool. And then I kind of fell off after the change up. There was a lot of references to the games. You know, there were points where they were saying "test your might." There were a lot of characters in this movie that I didn't expect to be in this movie. Again, we'll talk about that later. All in all, like, if you're a fan of the Mortal Kombat series, as long as you can accept the changes they made to the storyline, because they did make very, very significant changes, you will enjoy this movie. They worked hard for their R rating. There is a lot of blood. There were some scenes where the blood was kind of unnecessary, how much they had. Like, one dude will get cut up and he'll just be spraying blood. So that was a little goofy, but you get the point. They did leave it open-ended for a sequel, and personally, I'd be really happy for it because there was so much about this movie that they did right. As far as things they did wrong, this is dipping slightly into spoilers, but I won't get into specifics until we get into the spoiler section of the video. But they did kill off a lot of characters. There was a lot of back and forth fighting. It was great, but so many characters are already dead. Granted, it's Mortal Kombat and nobody ever really stays dead in Mortal Kombat, but still, if they're going to make this into a series, I'm going to be kind of left wondering what's up because, again, they killed a lot of people. As far as character designs go, a lot of the character designs were pretty great. There's only like maybe one that I really got bothered by, but again, we'll cover that in spoilers because I don't want to talk about too much who was in the movie. But all in all, as a Mortal Kombat fan, sorry, I thought the movie was decent. I thought it was really, really good. Trying to separate my fandom and the nostalgia from the movie, it still was a pretty good action movie. Again, great score, great fight scenes, and really, really solid CGI work. It's just some of the lines were a little meh. Now, if you guys haven't watched the movie yet, stop now, go watch the movie, and come back and we'll talk about spoilers. Because there's a lot of stuff that happened in this movie that I want to talk about. But that is the end of my spoiler-free portion of the review, and now we are jumping into heavy spoilers. If you guys want to hear my final verdict, timestamp below, jump ahead. But welcome to the spoiler section, guys. Now let's talk about what happened in this goddamn movie. I took many, many notes. So the movie opens up with a part I didn't expect it to open up with. Granted, the first 10 minutes of the movie was somebody already leaked it on YouTube. I refused to watch it. I knew I wanted to watch this movie fresh, and the excitement was just pounding through my veins. We actually open up with Hanzo with his family. You know, Hanzo Asashi, aka Scorpion. And he is with his family, and he's just, you know, in his little village, or they call it the Hanzo compound. And, you know, he's talking to his wife. She sends him off to get some water. We see his son, and then they do something immediately different right away. We hear a baby crying. It turns out Hanzo had a daughter. Now, in the games, he didn't. He had his wife, he had his son, and that was it. But this daughter becomes a huge part of what makes the story what it is. So Hanzo goes to get water, and of course, that's when the Lin Kuei attack. We see a few people getting killed. We hear them screaming. You know, they do the cut up the door. But then we actually get to meet Bi-Han, aka Sub-Zero. He comes in, talks Chinese, which is interesting. They actually have the Lin Kuei speak more in Chinese, and the Shiryu, Hanzo's ninjas, talk in Japanese. He starts talking Chinese. They don't understand. He starts talking Japanese. He's trying to find Hanzo, and Hanzo is collecting water. Hanzo's wife, before Bi-Han gets in, hides the baby under a floorboard, and, you know, grabs her son, tries to keep him safe. After they get intimidated by Bi-Han, he makes like a dagger out of ice, and then it cuts away to Hanzo, and Hanzo hears his wife screaming. He runs back and he sees his wife and child frozen. he pulls out his sword because he had a ninja sword on him, and he just starts murdering Lin Kuei left, right. The choreography was great. He does all kinds of like crazy spins and whatnot. His wife was guarding with a dagger. He turns it into his rope spear. It was a ninja dagger. He takes it, ties a rope on it, goes ham. Again, beautiful choreography. The way he spins the rope and he spins it, cuts two dudes' throats, and then whips it around and shoves it through a dude's head, and then rips it back out. Like he was just going in until he ends up fighting Bihan. So he kills all the Lin Kuei that are there. His family's dead. He doesn't know his daughter's alive, but he goes after Bihan. We get a really, really amazing fight between him and Bihan right there, but Bihan ends up coming out on top. Bihan actually kills him with his own spear. He stabs it into him and leaves him there to bleed to death. He comes to because he hears the baby crying, and he tries to cross the baby, but he bleeds out and dies. What was interesting here is when he bleeds out and dies, his body immediately turns to ash. Wasn't really sure why. We end up finding why later in the movie. And then we see lightning hit the ground, and Raiden shows up. Raiden shows up, finds the baby, saves the baby. Now we fast forward ahead, and we find out about this prophecy. We get it in some text that apparently when Earthrealm was about to lose the tournament, there's a prophecy that a member of Hanzo's bloodline would lead Earthrealm's warriors to save Earthrealm. So, 9 tournaments have already been won. We get to see Shang Tsung, and it turns out Sub-Zero is working for Shang Tsung, which is very different. In the games, Sub-Zero wasn't even Sub-Zero that killed the Shirai Ryu. It was Quan Chi, but Quan Chi's not in this movie. Sub-Zero actually works for Shang Tsung, and I'm guessing he's immortal because they start talking about the remaining Shirai Ryu. As far as I know, there is none. He said that he killed Hanzo and Hanzo's entire bloodline centuries ago, which was the opening scene we saw. But it turns out that Cole Young, the new main character, is actually the descendant of Hanzo. That the child that Raiden saved, the bloodline eventually trickled down into our new main character, who is a descendant of my boy Scorpion. By the way, Scorpion is my favorite Mortal Kombat character, so the fact that this all revolved around this bloodline, I was kind of geeking. Now, we jump over to Cole, and we find out that Cole is actually kind of a prize mixed martial artist, kind of not. I guess he did at one point have a high life in a career, but now he's just kind of doing cage fights for entertainment, like $200 a fight, which is nothing for a cage fighter. He actually has his daughter as his cornerman, and we see him fight, and he actually loses. He actually submits, gets his ass whooped, and then we meet his wife. I guess his wife doesn't like watching him fight anymore. But we get to meet Cole's whole family, and we run into Jax. After Jax was there for the fight, saw him lose. Jax starts talking to him, mentions the mark, and they tell him that he was born with it, but Jax asks to see it. He sees it. Jax ends up talking to what we find out is Sonya. So right now they're piecing together what's going on. Shang Tsung sends Sub-Zero after Earthrealm's champions, basically anybody who has this mark. So Sub-Zero shows up in what appears to be the real world, and he actually attacks Cole and his family. Even though his family has nothing to do with it, he goes after all of them, and Jax saves the family. That scene from the trailer where Jax shooting Sub-Zero and then Sub-Zero freezing his arms off was actually because Jax was trying to save Cole's family. He basically lets Cole take his car and his family and go, and Sub-Zero basically lures Jax away and fights Jax. They actually go back and forth, and it was actually a pretty decent fight. Jax, trying to use raw strength against the ninjutsu master of Bihan. He eventually ends up losing, and that's when he gets his arms blown off. Sub-Zero leaves him for dead, but he does survive. It turns out the ice actually cauterizes his wound, but again, we'll get to that a little later. Cole gets his family away, sends them to a house to hide, and ends up taking Jax's van to go meet Sonya. Jax told him where to go to meet Sonya, somewhere in Indiana. He ends up running into Sonya. Him and Sonya have a little scuffle. When she finds out Jax sent him there, she starts explaining all the stuff about Mortal Kombat, all the research she found about how she found and Jax were in a unit that encountered one of these fighters, and basically their unit got destroyed by somebody with superhuman abilities. Now, this is really important. Sonya is not one of the champions. She does not have a mark. It turns out that, you know, these marks are very specific to people, and if you manage to kill somebody who has said mark, that's when you get a mark. Apparently Jax didn't have a mark, but he had killed somebody who had a mark, and that's how he ended up with it. That's why Jax is one of the, you know, the chosen fighters. And then we get to meet Kano. Now, the trailer played it off like Kano was going to be this magical good guy, which made no sense. Thankfully, he's not. He's exactly what we expect him to be. He is a thug. He is the Black Dragon. They talk about the Black Dragon clan, and he is in chains because Sonya caught him. He encountered one of the champions and fucking took a knife to them because he's Kano. And Kano is perfect throughout the entire movie. He's sarcastic. He talks a lot of shit. Even when he goes to the temple, again, we'll get there in a second. He's Kano. Now, we're bouncing back and forth between Shang Tsung's crew and what's going on with Cole, and we actually get to see Shang Tsung have an interaction with Melina. Now, a lot of people complain about Melina's character mostly because her mouth wasn't, you know, a Tarkatan mouth. It didn't go all the way from ear to ear. Thankfully, that's not the case. But again, that's what happens a little later. We do see her with all the fangs, and just it looks like it's all blood. Either way, they're talking about going after the champions. It turns out that the only reason they won the 9 tournaments they won is because they've been cheating the entire time. There's rules in place that they have, but I guess the Elder Gods only enforce certain ones, so they were just finding loopholes around the rules, and that's how they've been winning all the tournaments. And I guess one of the rules is if there's no champions, you win. So they're murdering the champions. So they make a reference, and I got super giddy. They say send the reptilian Sizoth after them. For anybody that doesn't know, Sizoth is the real name of Reptile. So I was immediately excited that now we have confirmed Reptiles of the movie. Well, after we meet Kano, we actually get to see Reptile show up, and you know, he's invisible, and he starts attacking Sonya, Cole, and Kano. And this was probably the only character design I was really upset about, because rather than make him, you know, the Green Ninja like we're used to, or like a human lizard hybrid, he's almost entirely reptilian, which does happen in the games. He does eventually get there where he's basically a reptile with arms and legs, but I would have liked to see him just a little bit more human. And he was probably where the CGI was the weakest. It was between him and Goro. But as far as his abilities, though, he was perfect. He had his invisibility. He had his acid breath, his acid like drool, which I didn't think they were gonna do, but they did. And that's actually how Kano escapes his binding and ends up helping them fight Reptile. He beats the shit out of Cole. Sonya's like throwing knives at him, accidentally sticks Kano with one. It's hilarious, but they're able to kill Reptile because Sonya manages to stab Reptile in the chest, and where she stabbed him, that's where Kano rips out his heart while it's still beating. And you know, we also see that Reptile claws at Kano's face, and that's where Kano becomes disfigured. We all know as Mortal Kombat fans that's where he gets the metal plate, but he doesn't get the metal plate in this movie, which made me a little sad. I thought after he got clawed he would eventually get it, but it's okay. I'm not mad about it. I got over it. Now, Kano saw all the research that Sonya had and realized that she was looking for the Temple of Raiden. Apparently he knew where it was, but didn't want to tell them. After he was free now, he just wanted to bounce. Sonya tricks him by offering him like $3 million that she doesn't have to take them to the Temple of Raiden. And he has a friend with a plane, so they fly to the desert. Little scenes throughout the movie is that Cole's been having nightmares about Hanzo. and he like wakes up after seeing him. He sees Hanzo's dagger, the one that he was killed with, like wrapping up, like the handle's getting wrapped up with like armor. It looks like metal, just wrapping around the handle, almost like it's getting ready. It was interesting, but the symbolism, we don't get the symbolism until later. They end up parachuting out of the plane, and now they have to travel for a bunch of days. And that's how they're supposed to get to the Temple of Raiden. As they're going, they actually run into Liu Kang. And I was really excited to see Liu Kang. Liu Kang shows up and hits Kano with a fireball, so Kano tries to like attack him. And they actually have a power system on why all of the Earthrealm fighters who are supposed to be normal people have superpowers. So I thought it was cool that they did that. Granted, it's not something they needed to do, but I appreciated it. It again changes up the lore of Mortal Kombat and kind of makes it more into their own. But Liu Kang leads them to the Temple of Raiden, and he explains to fight Outworld, they have to unlock their special powers called Arcana. In Liu Kang's case, he has the fireballs and other fire attacks that he uses later. He tells them that anybody who has the mark has the capability to gain this ability, but it's different depending on the user. He tells them that they're going to have to train. They basically tell Sonya that she can't do it. There's nothing she can do. She doesn't have a mark, so she's actually a liability, but she sticks around. Raiden. They made Raiden a monster. He just has so much swag, and he was so intimidating. I actually thought he was one of the strongest characters, like, personified in this universe. First thing he does after talking smack to all the heroes, he literally tells Cole's not physically or mentally ready to fight, tells Sonya she's useless, and when Kano tries to talk shit, he literally just blasts Kano. It was hilarious. Shang Tsung shows up to the temple with all his goons and wants to attack them right then and there, but Raiden really puts a giant warding around the temple so they can't even get in, and then they start training. So when Shang Tsung comes in, before Raiden puts up the protective barrier, my bad, I missed the part. I thought we were getting a repeat of the original movie because Sub-Zero goes after Liu Kang, and I'm just like, this is gonna be nuts. But Liu Kang starts getting his ass whooped and actually gets saved by Kung Lao. So I was hyped for Kung Lao to come in. They got cut short. Raiden puts up the barrier. Kung Lao and Liu Kang basically take charge of training the newbies. Now, Cole fights with Kung Lao, or spars, and I was really, really impressed with the choreography here. I thought he had the best choreography of the movie. Kung Lao, sorry, I should have been more specific. Because his fighting looked so close to the game, it was crazy. Like, he had his rapid punches. Like, some of his spin kicks looked like they were straight out of Mortal Kombat. And I was really, really impressed. Even some of the things he did with his hat, because they gave him the bladed hat. Now, Cole's not able to figure out his Arcana, neither is Kano. We have a scene of them at dinner. We also get to find out that Liu Kang saved Jax. Jax is actually in the temple with them. And the Shaolin give Jax these really, really skinny metal arms. They're supposed to be like prosthetics, but he can't move them. They're just not the arms we're used to seeing on Jax. And Jax tries to, get himself mentally prepared to fight because he is still a champion. And he's only able to start doing it because of Sonya. They have a heart-to-heart where she basically tells him to stop being a bitch. We end up having a scene with all of them sitting down eating, and Kano, being Kano's talking shit to Jax because he's got the little arms. Well, Kung Lao starts talking shit to Kano, basically telling him what a failure he is. And he basically explains that he's not worth being a champion and all the things that Kano's doing wrong. And Kano starts getting mad. He's like, do you know who you're talking to? I'm the Black Dragon. I've killed hundreds of people. I've done things that you couldn't even imagine. And then Liu Kang starts talking shit to him too. So it's Kung Lao and Liu Kang talking shit to Kano, and eventually Kano snaps, and that's when he unlocks his Arcana, which is his laser eye. Which I thought was cool. He did it by accident, and as soon as he did it, everybody realized what they were doing. They were trying to push him to unlock his power by attacking the thing he values most, which is his pride. Raiden, after seeing, Kano unlock his shit and Cole still struggling, eventually tells Cole about his lineage. He eventually tells him that he's the son of Hanzo Hasashi, aka Scorpion, before he becomes Scorpion, and that the mark he has and why he was the only one who's actually been born with the mark is because the mark is passed down through the generations from Hanzo, because he was one of the greatest ninja to ever walk the earth. And he had hoped that, the power and strength of Hanzo would pass through the generations to Cole, and unfortunately it did not. So he makes a portal, sends Cole back home, and we actually get to see more of the villain characters, because we go back to Outworld with Shang Tsung, and we get to see, for one, a character I did not expect, which is Natira. I don't know if you guys remember Natira from Deadly Alliance, but she was the vampire. She had, bat wings and sucked blood and all that stuff. But she is working for Shang Tsung. And then we also get to see two more characters fighting for Shang Tsung. We get to meet Cabal, who is just Cabal. He's been burned. He's in an oxygen mask. He's got the hook swords. They did him right. And Raiko, another character I did not expect. Raiko was not a super major character in any of the Mortal Kombat games, but to see him get represented in this movie bugged me the fuck out. I almost didn't realize who he was until I went back and looked him up. But he's here too. He's got a big ass hammer, kind of reminiscent of Shao Kahn. One thing I did miss that I'm going to talk about real quick: when they first got to the Temple of Light, we actually saw some murals, some really, really important murals. We saw a mural showing the Tarkatans. We saw a mural showing the Shokan, aka Goro. We saw a mural showing Edenia. And we saw a mural showing Shao Kahn. So Shao Kahn is in this universe. Anyway, sorry about that. So Cabal is talking to Shang Tsung. They're talking about the barrier. And basically, Shang Tsung says, we need to get in. I want to take them out. Cabal offers to talk to Kano, and says that they can basically use Kano to get through the barrier. Well, Kano ends up going to the barrier. He sees Cabal. They have some witty retort back and forth. Cabal again assaults Kano's pride, basically telling him that he's under control, that he should do whatever he wants, and that if he switches sides, he'll have more money than he knows what to do with. And the greed gets the best of him, and he basically tells him how to disable the barrier. Well, once he disables the barrier, Shang Tsung forces to invade the temple, but he also does something else. He sends Goro after Cole, because, he's the descendant of Hanzo. So, we end up getting, a bunch of fights. Cole's getting his ass beat by Goro. Melina is fighting Sonya. Jax is trying to fight Raiko with his little bitty arms. It's not working. Kung Lao immediately takes out Natira in the coolest way possible. We get the first, flawless victory, straight fatality. He tries throwing his hat at Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung dodges it. Natira comes at him. He jumps on Natira's back, gets his hat back, throws it at the ground, literally spins it like he does in the game, and drives her body straight through it, splits her in half. And I was completely okay with that. But anyway, Liu Kang ends up fighting Cabal, and Sub-Zero's just chilling. He ain't worried about nobody. Things are going south. Melina starts beating on Sonya, stabs her, tastes her blood, realizes she's not a champion, and actually teleports away. They gave Melina her teleports, which is cool. Raiko basically drops a statue on Sonya, and she's basically taken out. Jax isn't able to help. He's all fucked up. Cabal beats on Liu Kang. That fight basically goes nowhere. But the big thing is Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung ends up going after Kung Lao for what he did to Natira. And he actually ends up taking Kung Lao's soul. Cabal talks some shit to Liu Kang, saying that he's about to get his soul taken and that he loves to scream before it happens. And he gets there just in time to watch Kung Lao lose his soul. Now, the big thing is what's going on with Cole. Cole's getting his ass beat by Goro. He's trying to do stuff against him, but it's Goro. His wife sees him getting his ass beat, grabs an axe, and tries to attack Goro. Goro ends up going after his wife and kid. Well, upon seeing this, the bracelet. He has a bracelet that his daughter made for him at the beginning of the movie. It like wraps around him and turns into a giant suit of armor, into like an upper body suit of armor, kind of like the way we saw like armor wrapping around Hanzo's knife dagger. Now that he has his Arcana, he tries to fight Goro again, and basically what it does is every time he's getting hit, it absorbs the damage. He still takes damage, it just absorbs the impact and lets him redirect it. He actually ends up getting hit by blocking a bunch of Goro's attacks, and then does like a super powered uppercut. You see like the armor start to turn red, and then it redirects. But then he also takes another beating by Goro, and actually it turns into these like bladed tonfas, and he just starts fucking Goro up, cuts off his arms, beats the shit out of him, and ends up killing Goro by stabbing him in the eye. Once he kills Goro, Raiden basically opens a portal and lets him come back. They manage to force, Shang Tsung's group back, and Raiden teleports all the heroes away, but he wasn't able to save Kung Lao. He gets them all away. He takes them to, he calls it the Void. It's like a world between the Gods realm and Earth realm, and he basically explains to them that he can't save everybody. Cole ends up coming up with a plan. Says, we gotta fight smarter. If we split them up, we could take them all out one by one. And he actually asked Raiden, can you teleport people to anywhere? And this part was dope yet again. One more thing I missed. Sorry, going a mile a minute. Jax manages to save Sonya by activating his Arcana, and it actually transforms his arms into these giant metal arms. And he actually was able to get the statue off for it before Raiden gets them all out of there. Again, my bad. So, when they teleport to the Void, Cole comes up with the idea of how to beat everybody. He says we gotta divide and conquer, split them all up, take them all out one by one, and they start divvying up who's gonna fight who. They decide to save Sub-Zero for last, and that they will team up on Sub-Zero because nobody's beating Sub-Zero one-on-one. So, we end up getting Raiko versus Jax, Kano versus Sonya, Liu Kang versus Cabal, and Melina versus Cole. Everybody decides on who's who. Raiden gives Cole Hanzo's dagger, the one that actually killed him. Still has his blood on it, and he says that if he fights with it, his ancestor will basically fight with him. It was cool. Cool little speech, and a little bit of foreshadowing. But it turns out Raiden can teleport anybody anywhere, including Shang Tsung's people. And the area that Jax and Raiko go to is basically the bridge from the games, from Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. The bridge with the spikes on below, and it was exactly the right arena, and I freaked out about it. But we bounced between all the fights, but I'm basically just gonna run through what happened. Jax beats the shit out of Raiko, no difficulty whatsoever, and ends up fucking crushing his head. It was great, and he just looks at the arms like, these work. Now, the fight with Sonya and Kano was actually more interesting because Kano obviously has his laser eye, but they had a really ridiculous knife fight, and they were going back and forth, and it was great. And he ends up chasing her outside, lasering through, because they end up fighting in her home, which is basically like a trailer park that we saw earlier in the movie. And they end up outside, and he's about to choke her out. He's about to choke her out and kill her, but she manages to get a garden gnome and stab him in the eye with it. And because she killed him, she ends up with a mark. Now we jump over to Cole and Cabal. Cole and Melina, Cabal and Liu Kang, they actually fought basically 2-on-2. They fought in the same area. Liu Kang ends up taking out Cabal by getting him in like a pit. And that's when the scene where we see him summon the dragon. And he ends up lighting Cabal on fire, kills him. Melina is giving Cole some trouble because she's teleporting all over the place. And she actually is about to get at Cole. And that's when we actually see her mouth rip open, and she has the full Tarkatan mouth. As soon as they did that, I screamed like a little girl. But she ends up getting taken out, not by Cole, but by Sonya. Sonya shows up and immediately can use her Arcana, and it's basically her ring blasts. So she just blows a hole right through Melina. You actually see it. We get a nice shot of Melina's spine, like with the hole going through, and we see them on the other side. It was actually pretty gnarly. But while this is all happening, Sub-Zero, being the psycho that he is, went after Cole's family. And we see some black smoke where Sub-Zero comes out of the black smoke, and he shows Cole the other bracelet that his daughter was wearing. So Cole immediately goes after Sub-Zero, and they basically pull it, which was a trap because he pulls him into the smoke, and they end up in the arena he was fighting in at the beginning of the movie. But now everything's frozen. So he tries to fight Sub-Zero, but it's Sub-Zero. His wife and daughter are there, frozen, not dead somehow, but they're fighting. He's getting his ass whooped. He ends up pulling out the dagger and tries to stab Sub-Zero with it. He manages to get a couple cuts, but Sub-Zero turns it on him, and because he realizes what dagger, he even says it's Hanzo's dagger. And when he goes to stab Cole with it, Cole grabs it and it cuts his hand. And as soon as it does, the knife starts glowing red. And Sub-Zero is going to kill Cole, and all of a sudden you see the spear from behind come through his arm, and it's my boy Scorpion, and he's just like, get over here, and he pulls him off of Cole. And he basically explains that, I came back from hell to get revenge, and he takes off his mask, and you see his eyes are white, his mouth is black, like he just looks crazy. He puts it back on, and the fight starts. And man, I was fangirling this entire fight. Cole's in the background trying to break his family out of the ice, and Sub-Zero and Hanzo going back and forth. The fight was epic as hell. There was one scene where he throws the spear, Sub-Zero dodges it, it sticks in the wall behind him, and when Scorpion tries to pull it back, Sub-Zero catches it, and it's just, the choreography was fan-freaking-tastic. They end up jumping back into the arena where Cole is, and Sub-Zero does the ice clone, which Scorpion tries to cut through. But now Cole is there, Scorpion's there, Sub-Zero's there. His family's still frozen, so Scorpion sees what's going on, and Cole and Scorpion team up on Sub-Zero. And man, it got even more epic. Like, you got Cole with his tonfas, you got Scorpion with his spear and his sword, and they start fucking up Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero, he ends up taking up parts of his armor as they start getting damaged, and he gets more and more desperate as he's fighting them. But what finally does it is Scorpion gets frozen, left on the ground, and Cole starts fighting Sub-Zero one-on-one. And as they're fighting, Scorpion basically lets out some hellfire to free himself, and he frees Cole's wife and daughter. Cole backs off. They end up getting Sub-Zero on his knees. Scorpion takes off his mask. He's like, you sent me to hell, hoping I would burn in the flames of hell. But he's like, no, I ended up learning how to control them, and he ends up doing the fire breath. Now, I was just like, okay, that's cool, but his head didn't turn to the skull. Well, he kept the hood on, but his mouth started turning into the skeleton, and I lost it. Now then, with Sub-Zero dead, Scorpion basically looks at Cole, he's like, you freed me, you let me get my revenge, thank you, live your life. Raiden shows up with all the other champions. Shang Tsung shows up and basically tries talking shit to Raiden and tells him, I can always get more champions. Next time I'm coming with you with armies, what are you going to do then? And Raiden's just like, we'll be waiting. Raiden explains that, there's more champions. He's gonna make a whole new list of champions. He wants them to start going to get them. And, Cole's the first one to say who's the first on the list. The last scene we see of the movie is Cole packing up his locker from the arena he was at. Dude tries to get him to fight. He's like, nah, I'm all done fighting. At least I'm all done fighting for $200. And they ask him where he's going to go next. He says he's going to Hollywood. And I freaked out. I got super excited, even though I am not a Johnny Cage fan, because I knew exactly what Hollywood meant. And even the guys just laugh. He's like, Hollywood. And then it pans over to a poster of Citizen Cage, and it doesn't show Johnny Cage's face, but it shows the belt buckle that says Cage. And a lot of people complained that Cole was a replacement for Johnny Cage, but he's not. Johnny Cage is not coming to the second one. So Johnny Cage is in this universe, and Cole is just a sprinkle on top with a connection to Scorpion. But that's where the movie ends, and then it kicks off into the new remix of the original song from the 90s. And I left that movie with a huge smile on my face. Now, that's everything that happened in the movie. So let's go into the final thoughts. How did I feel about the movie? Again, the movie played on my nostalgia wicked bad. There was many things that made me just super happy about it. As far as just a moviegoer goes, the action scenes were great. The fight scenes were top notch. The music was fantastic. The CGI had some very big weak points. I hated the way Goro looked, and I really didn't like the CGI on Reptile. But majority of the rest of it was decent. As far as a Mortal Kombat fan goes, I don't mind Cole. I'm a huge Scorpion fan, so the fact that he's related to Scorpion and it tied into the entire story, I was actually okay with. Sub-Zero was 100% the best character represented from the games into the movie. Shang Tsung was Shang Tsung. I mean, we got to see him steal one dude's soul, but other than that, he didn't really do anything. Melina was okay. I was happy that they gave her teleport ability because I didn't think they were going to, and I was also very happy with that they had them sides of her mouth to rip open. Again, my big problem with it was they killed off a lot of characters. They killed off Natira, Raiko, Melina. They did hint at Noob Saibot, which I'm okay with because Bihan is dead. But then they saw him wrap up in smoke and disappear. And Shang Tsung made a thing about, losing is just another path to eventually victory. And they hinted at Noob Saibot, which I'm okay with. I like Noob Saibot. But all the other characters gone. I guess Natera was supposed to be a one-off. Natera and Raiko make sense being a one-off because they're very minor characters in the games. But Melina is not. I don't like that Melina was serving Shang Tsung. She's supposed to be the daughter of Shao Kahn. But again, we'll see what they do in the future. Now, Raiden was the shit. Sonya was okay. Jax was decent. Now, all in all, my actual verdict for the movie, if I had to rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10, the fan in me wants to give it an 8 because of all the callbacks, but the moviegoer in me wants to give it a 7. So I think I'm going to go with 7. It was a good movie. I would definitely watch it again. It was a lot of fun, but it's definitely more fun for fans of the series. Whereas a casual moviegoer going to watch an action movie is going to be like, what the fuck is going on? They do a good job explaining everything, and they do have reasons for stuff happening, but it does end up becoming a gore fest. If there's anything I want to see, would I like to see them make a sequel? Absolutely. I would love to see more of this universe. But maybe a little less cheese. Like, one line that I really thought was cheesy was when Cole decides he wants to train with them. He's just like, I would fight for my family and I would die for my family. He sounded a little unrealistic. Imagine being a dude thrown into this war. But that's it, guys. That's my opinions on this movie. Again, I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. Let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I hope my score didn't piss anybody off. If it did, I'm sorry. Don't watch the video. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those links will be down below. But that's it from me, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.
I have a dream, that's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I've made mistakes, but mistakes make you strong. Let's break it down for a minute. I want the crown, I'm gon' get it. You hear me loud, man, I'm winning. Yeah, Charlie Sheen will be grinning.